The ongoing Stop and Frisk trial in Lower Manhattan just got even more interesting. In testimony that took the presiding judge even by surprise, former police chief Joe Esposito said that in more than a decade as the top brass in the NYPD, he never once heard a private citizen complain about a racially motivated street stop. He even testified that not a single community group or tenant association had even made a racial profiling allegation once to him. That claim has also been repeated by other police commanders. Now, when the judge asked a retired Bronx precinct commander, quote, did anybody ever complain about racial profiling? He said, no, man. Now, when Esposito testified last month, the lead city attorney asked him how he knew that racial profiling wasn't happening. Answer, quote, we don't get complaints about it, end quote. However, a police inspector later testified that Esposito's office received about 30 complaints each year, all involving race. All right, now, Dominic, I guess there's three different ways we could parse this. One is that these commanders are so removed from the ground guys that it's not getting up to them. Two is that, you know what, he's right, that this is much about some bleeding hearts of community activist groups, but nobody's really complaining about it. Or three, he's full of it, that this stuff is an open secret people talked about. Obviously, everything we talked about here, from quotas, they've caught him saying it on camera, precinct councils, etc. Which of those three you think?
All three are absolutely ridiculous in terms of the NYPD. Number one, I was there when Esposito said it. Chief Esposito said this. If you have no other defense, what else are you going to say? Why are you stopping overwhelmingly black and Latino people? Well, I don't know. And you got to come up with something. So some great person in the PR room came up with a great line. Number two, with all due respect, Amadou Diallo was shot at 41 times in the Bronx because he reached for his wallet. So do you really think an African-American man in his right mind is going to walk into a precinct when he knows if he complains to CCRB, the complaint basically goes nowhere? Oh, I want to make a complaint of being racially profiled. I'm not saying this is right, but there's a sentiment in the community, Richard, that you might not walk out of the station house that night.
Come on.
Now, I'm serious. You ask any black man the same thing that I just said. There's a sentiment that if you go in there to complain, you might either be arrested or you might not walk out on your own in your own will. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's the rest of the line was, it's only the Al Sharptons of the world. Well, let me take you back. I know I dominated the time. I'm going to shut up in 1 second. Let me take you back. In the 60s, whenever civil rights leaders came to a community and protested, what was the line that was said? Almost like clockwork each and every time. Outside agitators, we don't have a problem with our blacks. So this is nothing new. They regurgitated the old line. It's not going to work.
You don't think Scheinler's buying any of it?
Not for 2 seconds. It's laughable.
You know, but let me make the other argument. And I heard this debate years ago. I haven't heard it as much lately. And I'm not saying, by the way, guys in the job that I buy this, but let's say Esposito is even only half full of it, or that he's telling the truth, that it's never filtered up to him. I've heard the argument that if the cops aren't in the communities that they police, and they're going up to Pearl River or they're going to West New York or whatever, and they're not, if they're in the 5 boroughs, they're not living in the areas that they are policing, that they don't really, it's an us and them kind of mentality. Is the idea that cops should live where they work, does that make any sense?
Well, that's a big political issue that's been going on over the years. And I think really what happened was, I forget what year it was originally passed, but they allowed police officers to live in certain counties within New York State because of the cost of living in New York City and so forth. I mean, Atlantic City, when I was working down there developing casinos years ago, that was one of the big things they did. They did programs for low-income housing where they assisted officers, much like they've done in Westchester with fire departments and so forth, where if you're a public official, we will give you a 1%, 2%, 3% mortgage back then when mortgage rates were a lot higher. Is that an issue? I think the police union will fight you on that tooth and nail at this point. Families are well established and so forth.
It's asking a lot to ask a police officer on a police officer's salary to live on the Upper East Side or to live in sections of Midtown that are priced out.
I don't disagree with you, Andrew. I'm saying, would it make a difference, we think?
Of course it would. If return to the days of community policing, where the officer might not do X activity if he knows this kid, if he knows what the kid is capable of. It's a good thing if the officers know the community they're policing rather than be afraid of it. Now, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. In some communities, you have large amounts of crimes, and you should be afraid of some of these youngsters.
Well, it's not just that, but don't forget, as a police officer, you go to the police academy, you're not making a lot of money, you go live somewhere, may live with your family still.
Yeah.
As you work your way up, you may move from one precinct to another, so you can't live in the area you patrol necessarily. It's a question of whether they live in New York City and what that does for things. I think the police officers, number one, do a terrific job in New York City. The stats prove it. There are issues in stop, question, and frisk that need to be addressed, and any system has challenges that must be fixed over time. And number one, the thing wasn't mentioned here, Esposito, by the way, has retired, has an incredible track record for New York City and has done decades of service without any single issue.
They'll say the same
And
thing
so
about
what
Ray
he's-
Kelly, too.
Sure.
And then the detractors will say, yes, but at what cost?
But
Meaning
detractors will never give you 100% approval on anything.
But going back to Esposito's comments, I mean, my first reaction to that was, it sounds like selective hearing loss or plausible deniability, which we've heard in a lot of political circles as well, where you hear what you want to hear and you make sure that you don't hear the things that are not going to be helpful to your position or to your cause in order to hear.
Esposito-
We hear that in politics about plausible deniability all the time. It feels like one of those deals. Don't tell me what I don't want to know.
Well, let's back up. First off, he was under oath, and we all believe what he said
But
under
that's what
oath
makes it plausibly deniable.
was factually true. The man told the truth under oath. I don't question that, number one. Number two.
But if I set up a system where you don't tell me things that are going to be contrary to...
just
but
one
what
more
he's
basic
saying-
thing, just time out just one second. We on this show for years have been talking about this. So if some dopey host here knows about Stop and Frisk and has talked about it, that overwhelmingly it stops people of color. But how could the number 2 guy in the NYPD say, gambling in this establishment, I never heard of it?
Dominic was in the courtroom, so I didn't hear the testimony. I read what was in the New York Times today.
Right, and the Times
question
story was accurate, but the Times has also been under tremendous fire because people that support Stop and Frisk want them to report the story the other way.
I got to hit a break here, Doug, but I want to ask you. Go ahead.
I just want to say this one thing. Well, if you've never heard any complaints of racial profiling, Mr. Mayor, Police Commissioner Kelly, why didn't you testify then? Why did you run and say you're running the city? Why not go testify under oath? If you've never heard complaints, what's the problem? Go testify.
Well, that sets precedent, though. I think that's the bigger issue there, Dominic.
Right now, Dom, we're close. Like a week from today, to give an idea of what we're looking at in terms of the timeline.
The next couple of days, we're going to hear closing arguments, and then it goes to Judge Shineland, and no matter what the city says, she's going to rule one way or the other. And that's the bottom line.
Like Dominic said, no jury trial. There's more than one trial going on simultaneously about Stop and Frisk. We all agree it's going to change. How significantly, I think we're going to learn pretty shortly. Okay, keep the conversation going online and go to Facebook and Twitter, sound off. And here's a question. And it was really based off of that testimony and some of the testimony we've heard from the police brass. Is Stop and Frisk effective or, especially depending on the shade of your skin, out of control? We're going to take a quick break here, everybody. When we come back, we turn to a showdown on the Hudson. It's a huge story in Westchester County. It's a story that's gotten national headlines. It's about housing discrimination, a lawsuit many thought was resolved, but instead it's become a year-long, many years-long battle. We're going to be joined here by the chairman of the county board, someone who knows the case as well as anybody, find out why this thing has taken so long and what is really going on behind the scenes. Stay with us.